It's 8 o'clock. It's time to check in with the one, the only Sam Amick from The Athletic. Good morning, Sam. How are you?
Good morning, Jay. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How was your All-Star break?
It was good, although I feel like I didn't know Dave was out today. I decided to the weekly game of
Yes.
what does Sam look like? I just had to mix it up. So you're getting like the post All-Star weekend bedhead,
Yeah.
rolling out, barely getting going. And that absolutely reflects the spirit with which I came home from Indianapolis. It was a good weekend, but it is utterly exhausting. And disclaimer, these are first world problems. It's a fun job, but you get in late Thursday night after traveling across the country to get there. You typically run into a lot of colleagues and people around the NBA. So you don't go to bed quite as early as you do at home. And man, by the time Monday morning rolls around, you are dragging. So we're still recovering, buddy.
Yeah, and the consensus from those that watched or took part, it was a frustrating weekend. I always felt I've been to a couple All-Star games. I've enjoyed them more when I've actually been there. So you were there. It's different, but did it feel as disappointing as maybe it landed with the masses that watched the weekend?
Yeah, I mean the game for sure. The slam dunk contest was strange because like Mac McClung is awesome and he's super fun. The Jaylen Brown thing, I understand he didn't perform very well, but some kind of uncomfortable booing from the fans. And we were trying to figure out, is this just like a Pacers Celtics thing? What is happening here? Now, I don't know if you saw this on TV, but they actually put the Celtics court on that LED court at one point. So for the locals, that's not going to go well.
Right.
So, the slam dunk contest was kind of mixed results. 3-point was fun. The highlight of the weekend basketball wise was Steph Curry and
Agreed.
Sabrina Ionescu. Now, if you get to the game, quickly, my kind of experience there was I admittedly spent most of the game actually helping another writer with a story he was working on. I wasn't really focusing, but I knew that it wasn't going very well. So by the time the game ends, I hadn't even, I'm looking at the score and I'm rolling my eyes like, God, these guys did not get the message. And I wasn't planning on writing anything, but what ended up compelling me to write, kind of a cutting column was getting down into the locker room, running into some front office people who couldn't believe what had just happened, running into league officials who were frustrated. And then also some of the player reaction where, I had a line in my story that it just said, read the room, guys, because they were really focused on offense and had no interest in playing defense. And that's the exact opposite of what everybody had asked for this year.
Yeah, which I find a little weird. I read your piece and I thought it was interesting too, because what do we want? Like everybody seemed to be frustrated. We go years back, Sam, to the Heat and the Pacers or whatever Eastern Conference, playoffs, so that would give us 94-89 to now where the overcorrect is. I mean, we're getting regular season games comfortably in the 130s at a pretty regular time. Now 200 is ridiculous, but we kind of want all-stars. We want highlights, but we want competition. We're a little bit all over the place. And even the players, I felt you addressed it, that maybe the players would like to see, even a bigger financial payout for those guys. We do know this, though. One thing's for sure. I think Adam Silver's very aware. They're very proactive. What do you think his course correction could be to make this a better All-Star weekend?
I don't know, because honestly, he's already been, kind of throwing ideas against the wall these past couple of years. And I think it's a bad look for Adam. It's a bad time for Adam on this front. I'm sure saw the video of him post game.
Yes.
That for Adam Silver standards, like that's like smoke coming out of the ears.
Yeah.
Even though it came off as just dry humor, he was not happy. And the problem is, you already tried the Elam ending. You already tried the player draft. You went back to the East-West format. Running clocks, things of that nature. I don't know. At this point, it looks like I think the spotlight is squarely on the players, and if they're not going to care, then I mean, do they go the way of the Pro Bowl and kind of make it an exhibition in every sense of the word with no competition? I don't know, But again, the bigger context here that does matter is the league continues to negotiate its media rights deal. And in the same way that the in-season tournament in December, for example, if that would have gone as poorly as this, where the players, let's say the championship game just was not competitive, that would have been a big problem because it's all part of the package that the NBA is trying to sell to get the biggest possible number on their media rights deal. So in that sense, the players dropped the ball, no pun intended, on All-Star Weekend because they needed their media rights partners to have another tentpole event to say, oh, wow, we could really get ratings on this. We could get eyeballs on this. And the reality now is that people like us are just talking about, should they just get rid of it?
Yeah. It's a tough spot as we're talking with Sam Amick from the Athletic. Sam, I want to kind of close out the All-Star break talk or All-Star game talk with even some other news where the league is kind of changing even some of the parameters for the game. And everybody here locally would really love to see an All-Star game. At least I think the thought would be great to reward Sacramento, great fan base, still a relatively new building. But it seems like some of these parameters are going to be harder and harder for Sacramento to reach. So it seemed appropriate to bring up based on Indiana being a market like Sacramento, and seemingly that went well enough. But I don't know that we're going to see an All-Star game here anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's been accepted by the Kings people that, and barring an absolute boon in hotel development in Sacramento, it's just not going to happen. The difference between Indianapolis and Sacramento, of course, I don't have the numbers, but it's massive, is hotel numbers. And it's, you have to have, there's very strict parameters, a certain number of 4 and 5 star hotels. I saw a story yesterday. I forget which platform, but talking about why Oklahoma City would also not be getting an All-Star weekend anytime soon, even though they're on track for a new arena. So there's only, and hopefully I have this right, I think we're down to like 4 cities in the league that have never had it. But the Kings, unfortunately, I think are going to continue to be in that group. I did talk briefly at the All-Star weekend with Vivek Ranadive about some of his ideas in the past. You remember that they pitched the league on everything from having river boats, that would serve as hotels, to even having a thing where everybody or a lot of people would stay in Napa and they would do a partnership with the CHP and section off a lane on the highway to get people to and from. So they tried to get innovative. The league's not going for those ideas. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Now, that might have been the low point for the season as far as All-Star Weekend. You mentioned the in-season tournament. I think that went really well. But, Sam, what's ahead, I think, is really good for the league. We've got an MVP race that's open. We've got, I think, a chase for a title that has a lot of teams involved. I think we're, post-All-Star break here going into the rest of the way of a regular season that feels like it really is going to be important, and there's some good chases to watch. I think the NBA it has its next couple months is in pretty good position.
No, I agree. I mean, if you look at the title contender race to begin with, you've got this clear front runner in the Celtics. But what I kind of love about it is that it's a Celtics team that a couple years back, because they fell short in the finals, I feel like there still is some skepticism about their ability to get it over the finish line. Now, if you're a Vegas type, Boston's got to be your odds-on winner without question, because the Kristaps Porzingis addition has been fantastic. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum got the experience from a couple years ago. They seem very hungry. Drew Holiday obviously has fit in really well. They're a very, very good team, and they're out in front by a pretty healthy margin. But underneath them, you do. I mean, first of all, you got to go straight to the defending champions and say the Nuggets are hard to handicap because, there's been a little bit of coasting in their regular season, which honestly, that's kind of been their identity in the past. They weren't dominant in the regular season last year, but they still have a similar possible playoff formula, if you will, that could make them dangerous and maybe lead them to defend that title. And from there, just a bunch of good teams. The Clippers are playing extremely well with some good storylines in there. And, the Bucks and all the way down the line, the Sixers do appear that they'll get Joel Embiid back, hopefully late in the regular season. And that's a game changer. they have a Kings fan favorite, Buddy Hield now, and we'll see if that shooting helps them out. So yeah, there's plenty to kind of tap into and see where it goes.
Yeah, and I this is the first time I wouldn't say I'm on their bandwagon, but I'm really intrigued by the Knicks. I think they've been good. They're a two-way team, offense, defense, and what they added. Obviously, it's a great place to play. There's a huge excitement in New York. I think the Knicks are going to be fun to watch here the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure. Health wise, that's the only thing. Going into the break, they were really banged up. But nothing was season ending, and so once they get their guys back, there was that window of a couple of weeks, and it wasn't really a small sample size. It was pretty substantive, where the OG Anunoby impact was pretty obvious. Even we had the local conversation about how it did kind of shape the way I saw OG and the hypothetical now of whether or not he was somebody the Kings should have prioritized more. And we'll see if he can maintain that impact all the way through. But it was pretty incredible in the early going. The numbers were just off the charts. I mean, really like what every GM could ever hope for when it comes to a midseason trade helping their team. So I'm with you. There's that question of how far can the Knicks go with Jalen Brunson as their best guy, and he's leaning into that argument because he's been fantastic, and really showing out. And he's I love his story. It's a little bit like a Steph Curry light type story where he's relatable. And, I think people enjoy seeing him succeed because he's a smallish guy that you feel like shouldn't be able to do some of these things.
Sam, you brought up the Bucks earlier, and I would put them in that contender tier, but they're a little bit of a head scratcher right now too because of, talent wise, and we've seen them do it before. You add Dame, you see the pieces, and you have a championship coach. But what's going on with Doc Rivers? Their early struggle, and even some of the blasting that he's gotten over the last couple of days.
Yeah, man, social media is rough, and it's not even just social media; it's all over ESPN. They just suddenly went from a like a workmanlike team in the past to a drama team. Now, I'll share this. It's funny. Some of the Bucks people take pride in the fact that, like, hey, this is not LA. We do things differently around here. And I told our Bucks beat writer Eric Name this yesterday. I was like, bro, your team has suddenly become pretty Hollywood. Like, there's a lot going on. You got the Hollywood coach who is making headlines because he says stuff in the media. The Giannis and Dame thing is worth monitoring and is pretty tricky, I think. And I would recommend, if people are curious about that team, really good interview by our Bucks beat writer with Giannis that came out yesterday. And what jumped out at me is if Giannis Antetokounmpo is feeling compelled to publicly state that this is Damian Lillard's team, then he's clearly trying to like really massage some egos and to try to get this thing to work, because we all know whose team it is. But he is putting himself out there publicly and saying that Dame needs to feel like when the game is on the line, I'm going to hand the keys to him. It's got nothing ever reaches this stratosphere, but there are some Kobe Shaq dynamics there that I think, listen, Kobe and Shaq won 3 titles together. So, if I was Giannis, I would say, great, that sounds good. But we'll see kind of how they evolve, because once Doc got there, defense got better, offense got significantly worse, and they're trying to right the ship right now.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm definitely going to check that. I know they still come through Sacramento, so that'll be fun to watch them. Speaking of the West and the Kings, where do you put them in that list? Now, they've got the experience of 1 year at it. They kept the group together, but Sam, you see them, the kind of up and down nature of a team that has the same record but is currently in 8th. Where do you put them in a group of any kind of threat in the West?
So it's the same record as last year, Jay?
At the same time, it's just last year they were 3rd, now they're 8th.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember being in Salt Lake City last year at All-Star Weekend and joking with our Anthony Slater, who, as you know, writes a fair amount of King stuff now, in addition to his Warriors duties. And Slater and I have this funny running thing where, like, he's a little bit rose-colored glasses with the Kings, and I'm scarred by 16 years of so at the All-Star Weekend, I was literally telling him, like, bro, it's a wrap. Like, the Kings had held this brunch, and I was like, at All-Star Weekend, and I was joking about, like, they had fun at their brunch. and the wheels are going to fall off. And they didn't, and they surged. So they got to do that again. They're in a good spot. You can find yourself, in fifth place. Where's the gap? It's between 4 and 5, right?
Yeah.
In the West. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to get home court. That's just not going to happen. But you got to find a way to get out of the play-in, because in terms of expectations, getting into the play-in, and then for their purposes, God forbid, losing in the play-in, that would obviously be a step back from last year. So you need to avoid the play-in. They're capable. They seem to be finding their way going into the break a bit. They're still arguably the most confounding team in the league this season, but they do have talent, and I would think it would help their players and their core that coming out of the trade deadline, some of the messaging was from Mike Brown more than anybody was that he wanted to give this group like a 2-year runway. Now, obviously, they would have done trades if there was something really, really good there for the taking, but they have this same group that had fun last year and accomplished a lot, and now it's time for them to do it again.
Yeah, and they were, as you said, last year kind of all over the All-Star game, and now this year nowhere to be seen. So maybe they use that as motivator. I don't know how much that motivates them, but how about the teams right behind them, which always get attention, rightfully so, I guess, with the Warriors and their success, and then the Lakers. What do you think about their outlook? Currently in 9th and 10th, with the Lakers 9 and the Warriors 10.
Yeah, I mean, lots going on with both teams. The Lakers, of course, LeBron was front and center at All-Star Weekend and said he was happy being a Laker, but also said he wasn't sure what jersey he would be in when he retired. He's got a player option for next year. So we're going into these final months of, the constant reading of the LeBron tea leaves. And then within that, how will the Lakers play? Now he's missing tonight's game against the Warriors with an ankle injury that he dealt with before the break. AD playing really well. We'll see what they can do. The Warriors, they got all kinds of drama of their own, but it's a fascinating time. I mean, I don't know what percentage chance I would put it at, but the idea that they might be able to thread this needle and find something good with, it's wild to me that Klay Thompson is coming off the bench. I never thought I would see that this early. To his credit, if he can handle that role, not getting his feelings too much, Brandon Pajimski being a fantastic pickup in the draft. And I know I'm always shouting out The Athletic, but Slater wrote a really good Pajimski piece the other day that people should check out. Just a really good player who fits in with what they're doing. And then Draymond being back, Steph being Steph, Wiggins coming to life a little bit, Kuminga being a rising star. Like they found something before the break, and I'm really curious to see if they can keep it going.
What are you working on, Sam? What's kind of catching your attention over the next couple of weeks?
Everything from we do our annual anonymous player poll that we're going to get started on. That takes a while to put together. So, that'll be a kind of a second half of the season highlight. I think referee discussion is something that I'll be looking into, doing some reporting on to try to get a pulse on how frustrated people are around the league and what are the real issues at hand and the changes that have happened that have frustrated people. I mean, that's on my radar. Beyond that, it's kind of the bouncing around and trying to connect with different teams and players. Like tonight's one of those nights I got to decide, that we got Wemby in town. Do I go that direction? Or even with LeBron not playing, do I go down and do Lakers, Warriors? I'm a game time decision at this point, but just kind of making the rounds.
Yeah, on your referee angle, I think that's interesting. Is there something different now than in the past? Because in general, I mean, it's a tough job. We get that. I think they do well, but they do make mistakes. When are GMs, players, coaches happy with officials?
I know, and that's admittedly like something that is hard to filter through as somebody who's covered the league for a long time, is you become a little bit apathetic to the referee frustration.
Mm-hmm.
But then you talk to the actual coaches and the GMs and they kind of go, no, this is not the same old thing. And so it's like, then, all right, I take your word for it. Let me figure out why. I actually asked Karl Anthony Towns about this topic at All-Star Weekend. And, this is one theme that I think a lot of people would hit on, is that, he just said the experience is not there, that the referees are younger. Now, our job, and to be honest, it's not really easy to get all this data, is to figure out like, okay, from an informational standpoint, we got to drill down on that. Like, what is the collective experience level now compared to the past? How much cycling in and out of referees has there been? It's a good topic that is actually pretty hard to report on because a lot of that data is not available. But I think we're going to try to go down that road a little bit.
Start with Mike Brown. He'll give you a
Yeah,
laptop presentation, right?
exactly. Well, even that, I mean, that speaks to the culture that the league has created, right?
Yeah.
Where, I mean, I don't mind being transparent. Like, we talk about doing a story like this, our first thing is like, all right, like nobody can be on the record because the league has everybody terrified. Like, if Mike Brown pulls a laptop out, he's losing 40 grand, and I actually thought, I think a world should exist where a coach should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like all he really did is just give his side of the story, but that's not the culture that the NBA has created.
Yeah, what's interesting, I brought that up on the show the other day. Not just that, Sam. I think the league, again, you can look at anything as a positive or a negative. The league is very transparent, very out front of things, and I think in some cases that's good. I'm not the biggest fan of the last 2-minute report. I think, yeah, we get it. We know the transparency, what it means. You admit some mistakes. It doesn't change the outcome. But even stuff like being very public about some frustration here with the All-Star game and the commission, and we know it. I don't know if that's good or bad for the league. And then when you make changes and if they don't work, sometimes I just wonder about the freedoms that the league has and how much they've given to the players and if that's better or not. Again, I think you can make arguments each side, but it's basically the way the league has defined itself, giving the players and the owners a lot of freedom here and a lot of transparency. I guess a roundabout way to say I don't know if it's ended up in being better for the league or not.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, the 2-minute report, as you know, typically just inspires eye rolling from whoever the victim was of the 2-minute report. Is there more of a collective, holistic value in that transparency? I think, in the moment, it doesn't feel that way. And maybe there is over the course of time. But yeah, I mean, the vibe is not great. Adam Silver at All-Star Weekend said he wanted communication to be improved and respect between the both sides. But yeah, it's really hot out there. You know what I mean? Like you see these games where almost every night there's some pretty intense referee interaction.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, what's going to be the decider on the 50-50, whether you're going to the Warriors or the Kings tonight? Cookies at Golden One?
That's well, I should go the other way because of that, that middle-aged body that we're fighting. Yeah, I mean, logistics come into play.
Yeah.
It's very taxing it's not just the drive. Like Slater and I sometimes will carpool down.
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly, the benefit for me if we do carpool is that now I'm getting in the weeds, but like only the beat writers get a parking spot at Chase Center. The rest of us have to go park off site and typically spend between $35 and $50 to go park. That's kind of a pain in the backside. So those logistics they always mean like the Kings games are just a much easier evening. But it's also Lakers Warriors, even without LeBron, it's, like we just kind of highlighted, there's a lot going on with those two teams. So I'll have to figure that out, buddy.
All right. Well, I'll know firsthand what decision you made. Hopefully we see you out at the arena tonight. If not, we'll see you soon and definitely look forward to talking to you next week, Sam.
You got it. Thanks, Jay.
All right. Thank you. That is Sam Amick from The Athletic. We will zero in a little bit more on tonight's Kings and Spurs game. Still to come, we will talk with the